I was saying we were just following that. I'm not saying blindly we should follow. I think there should be an empowerment to the teachers, and it's a win-win for the student. And end of the my this small speech, I would like to say it's a collaborative approach. I have visited almost more than 1,000 schools, and there are some schools, especially in this platform, they are independent. They can do a lot of changes beyond this policy. And Akshal is one of the example. We will definitely hear him. So, but we have to really support other schools which are not competent. They need a lot of support to execute this policy. As an SRM University Sonipat, we have almost adopted many changes in our university. Few of them I just want to highlight. One is the choice-based credit system. You're a student of engineering, but you want to study a different subject, law or management. So there is an option, you can do that. And this will really help in your professional life. Second point is the curriculum is as per the industry. I talk about the third island because it's a school, then higher education, then industry. I think it is important. The curriculum has to be as per the industry requirement. And third is the who is teaching that curriculum. And this policy is talking about the vocational training. This will really help students when they are joining higher education. After that, when they are when they are going to start their corporate journey. With this, I will just want to say thank you, Rajul. You are doing a good job. I can see a lot of books which I can see on the in your I don't know this. You are looking like a lawyer today, but I don't know whether you have done that LLB program or not. But when you started this discussion of this policy, I have not seen even a single book. Now you have so many books. I hope this is the key for the implementation of this education policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pankaj sir. You talked about the important pillars, which NEP is based upon. You talked about your assessment that NEP is a student learner-centric policy. In fact, many other educators have also shared similar views. You talked about the focus of NEP, on vocational education is going to change the entire spectrum. It is going to create a huge impact. You also talked about that, due to this pandemic, we have formally accepted the intervention of technology. So now it is a collaborative approach, which is more important in order to execute this policy successfully. So thank you, Pankaj sir, for these important points. I'll be coming back to you with questions. Now I would request Divya Lalji, Divya ma'am, if we can have your ideas.
Thank you, Rajul. And thank you to the esteemed panel for some very thought-provoking statements and very exciting aspects. So I think a lot has been said about the policy. Pretty much every aspect has been said. I want to talk about two basic things. Being the EdTech evangelizer that I have been, I think tech is in some way being always been perceived as a stepchild in a lot of ways, because people feel when we talk about technology, we are trying to contest man versus technology. However, everybody in the EdTech space always knows that tech is just another aid, another support, another augmentation to anything like textbooks or blackboards or anything. And while we talk about debating how much, how less, I think that discretion goes for everything. Running lectures endlessly also has a discretion. Running only activity based also has a discretion. So I think finding the right mix of stimulation for your child in terms of the teaching pedagogy and the construction of the curriculum that one chooses to design is a key piece. I think what we've all come to know, if there was no technology or not use, etc., we won't be talking here today with you. So in the last 12 months, India has stood tall, and I think it is the spirit of the teachers that we should salute, and it is the infrastructure and the IT and the tech solutions that have put India's education on a leapfrog moment, much better than ever it has been in the history in the last 100 years of what we've been able to reach out and create. India is a country of various levels and genres, and that is why there has never been one solution that fits all. And that is why this policy will also have a spectrum of implementation, the way I see it. We have seen private schools take the strength and actually take that first step to really reach out and connect using a lot of EdTech platforms. But we've also seen government schools on WhatsApp groups. I think Gauri ma'am did talk about, and I've been a part of many such initiatives supporting government and NGOs who've done this. TV channels who've reached out for content and trying to reach, radios that have reached out to reach out. So I think we have to appreciate the spectrum of solutions for the country, which has spectrum of people to reach out to with limited resources, and with varied solutions there will be an opportunity. And I think similar things will emerge as we implement this policy. I've been very fortunate to be on a lot of panels with discussions with Nishankji himself, and we've always debated that you really don't need a paper to start implementing. Many things in the policy can just start getting implemented, and you don't need really a flag off to happen. And I think that should be the call to arms as far as the entire education domain is concerned, from whichever platform you're coming. The second part I want to talk about, and that is defining the edtech space and what we are doing and what we believe we should do. I believe this is an opportune moment where schools, day schools, can actually truly bring personalization to real life. In today's life, day schools are naturally more aligned for an 8 to 2, 9 to 3 kind of a relationship with the school. And after that, the child goes through many academic co-curricular activities and whatever happens in their life. I believe this is a time when you can take up learning systems, which will enable teachers during the first part of the day, and which will give a personalization learning space in the second part of the day. Because at the end of the day, what is very important is not only our interpretation of the NEP, but the bigger part is our interpretation of the generation that is studying in our classrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about children who are truly the anytime, anywhere generation. And they believe their biorhythms are separate, their choices are different, their ability to access information is different. Somebody did mention they're not reaching out to us for information anymore. Gone are the days when you would reach out and say, what is this, what is that? Now your nephew, nieces, children, grandchildren don't reach out to for anything. My own niece, nephew tell me, oh, we checked it on YouTube, we already know what it is, etc. They will reach out to you maybe for relationship, bonding, needs. And I think it is important to understand a generation that is so much hands-on, okay, in terms of acquiring information, how we really redefine and transact curriculum in a way which leverages on their strength of sourcing information and sharing, and us helping them with doubt clarification and platforms to apply that, research on that, and communicate wherein building the skills that they will need in their life. I think it is, I said this in my opening statement, this could be a whiteboard opportunity for the entire education system to really relook. I've really talked about why 210 working days? Why can't we redefine it? Gone are the days when schools were closed at the blink of an eye of it's too hot, it's raining, it's too cold, now it is something, there is some insurgence in the city. Now you can really redefine how much you want a child to learn, what can happen from home, what can happen, what kind of a phygital model can apply. And that is why adopting learning systems is a great initiative that many schools across the country are taking in to bring it to some life. And like I said, discretion and moderation of use goes for anything that we do in our life. It's a part and parcel, and tech is no separate to that. But it's also the true enabler, which is enabling each one of us to stay connected, and for that matter, in the last 1 year, to stay sane, emotionally, mentally, whatever has helped us to get through while we've been logged in has helped. So I think I will leave with these 2-3 threads. One, this is a moment to redefine many preconceived structures and notes of number of working days, our relationship of 8 to 2, 8 to 3. And second aspect, to a generation that is an anytime, anywhere generation, whether it is learning, whether it's entertainment, whether it is any piece of their aspect, how can schools create a space for children that gets them connected with educators in the first hour while they're in the schools or at home or every piece, and beyond the school hours gives them a space to actually explore other aspects. I'll leave you with that, Rajul. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anupama. Thank you, Divyaji. You talked about why and how technology is offering those solutions. And you rightly said, like India's diversity has always demanded, multiple and different kind of solutions to solve its problems. And we all agree with you when you say that the time has come, for the personalized education. And I believe that all these stakeholders, schools and parents have recognized the importance of it, and technology absolutely is giving a lot of solutions to do that. We also agree with you when you say that today children belong to the category of anywhere, anytime. In fact, one educator, coined a term that today's children, they are the digital natives, and teachers, they are the digital migrants. So teachers need to adapt according to the learners' expectations. You also talked about that NEP has given us an opportunity to redefine and explore our traditional and conventional practices. So we all agree with you, Aditya ma'am. Thank you for that. I'll be coming back to you with questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with this, I would invite the last key speaker for the session, Mr. Akshal Agrawal. Akshal, you are the youngest, the speaker on the panel. I'm sure that you look at it this policy from a different perspective. Over to you, Akshal.
Thanks, Raju. So, the focal point of today's discussion, amongst other things, has been the importance of teacher training and importance of the fact that no matter what the policy document says, it has to be implemented in a manner that is in line with what the government actually intends to do. And with that, since I also happen to be in this group, the most recent pass out from our school education system, so I remember it quite vividly. And before I go on to say, let me first say that there are a lot of schools, many of them represented on this panel, who are doing a stellar job. They are hitting the learning outcomes. They are identifying that they need to go beyond 20th century skills. They are incorporating critical thinking, emotional development, all of that in their curriculum planning process. The NEP 2020 document is not for these top 2-3% schools. It is for the 97-98% of the other schools. And as I sit here and having worked with around 300 to 400 schools across the country, and having closely trained the teachers as nature nurture, we design their learning outcomes. I now personally see that even 15 years back, the level of education that I got in my school, the level of support that I got from my teachers, which in part is also one of the reasons why I am in education, there is still miles ahead of where bulk of the education institutions are in the country. When the new education policy talks about STEM, talks about coding, talks about robotics, talks about solving the problems of unemployability, the core focus again shifts back to the educator. Whilst simultaneously, we're also trying to make learner-centric classrooms, but these learner-centric classrooms are going to be made by the educators. Therefore, like most documents, not just in education, we all come to the point where we say, and we pass a generic statement saying that the policy is wonderful, but the implementation has to be done correctly. But then what is it? My talk today is going to be what is it that we can do to sort of overcome this final hurdle and to implement things a little differently. Is first and foremost is that whenever an educator is joining a formal education institution, and whether it is in a capacity as a kindergarten teacher or in a senior class, we have to have them mandatorily go through a 90-day B.Ed course. And why do I say B.Ed course? They're all educators who have passed out B.Ed. They've all done their bachelor's in education degree. But as Isha ma'am was pointing out at the beginning, Gauri ma'am was pointing out at the beginning of the session, the curriculums of B.Ed have not changed, but the world around us have changed. So therefore, NEP or no NEP, one thing that is very, very important is that the first time an educator steps into the classroom, steps into the school, they should not be allowed to interact with the educators before set learning outcomes achieved through a consolidated 3-month course. And why I sort of say this is because we ran this pilot in across 100 schools across the country, where we had around 8 to 10 educators per school participate in that particular course. And then when they graduated from this 3-month module course and then took up their formal teaching responsibilities, their understanding was much more diverse. And it is in this course, we introduced to them the concept of the NEP 2020. And at that time, it was the NEP, draft NEP of 2019. And it is at that time we make them study the NCA documents and the like. Therefore, my operative part being, and coming to the main part of the policy of the discussion, which is NEP 2020, is that there is nothing in this document which in part has not been discussed before. There is nothing in this document which we as educationists don't feel are the bedrock of our education system. But the one thing that is now going to distinguish is now that formalizing it part of a policy, there is going to be mass public support, mass parental support when we advocate change in the classroom. And this is an opportunity that we have to capitalize. When we are trying to implement this right from the kindergarten stage, when we talk about concepts such as STEM and we add the aspects of foundational numeracy and literacy in them, the parents now will support us because it is a published policy document of the government. It is going to be mandated on the boards. It is going to be mandated subsequently, even in higher education. Therefore, the unique opportunity that has come for the next 3 to 4 years is to ensure that we are getting the teachers on the right platform. And the one thing that many of the people can take away from our experience, of running these courses a period of, across 100 schools across the entire country is that specifically a course aimed at refreshing your B.Ed course. And the way what we did is, first and foremost, we aligned the learning outcomes. We clearly defined that the educator should be able to establish an 8-part learning cycle with the children. That starts right from prepare, where the educator is preparing for the class. Second, connect, making a connection with the children they're trying to teach. Third part, demonstrate. After you made a connection, you're demonstrating what you're doing. Fourth part is engage. Once you've demonstrated what you have done, then you make the learners do it, you're engaging them in it. Fifth part is assess. What did the learner, what sort of engaged in, do you assess that? Sixth part is then assign. Assign something to the learners that they will do on their own. Seventh is review. Eighth is reflect. When seventh in review, you sort of review the performance of all the learners after they have left the class, and reflect is where you reflect upon your own performance. So to summarize again, this is an 8-step cycle that we created from prepare, connect, demonstrate, engage, assess, assign, review, and reflect. And believe you me, it is not limited to any particular learning outcome. It is not limited to any particular grade. And in these 3 months, what we did with educators was any topic that they would pick, simply taking a glass of water and telling the children, how do you drink water? You are doing this through this 8-step learning cycle. And in this process, we realized when you're talking about learning outcomes, you're talking about progressive learning outcomes, which the NEP is trying to highlight upon, they're automatically all covered. Therefore, my area of contribution to today's discussion is going to be that yes, as school leaders, we have to take a broader view of what's going on in the policy. And yes, the board is going to tell us a lot of things that will be part of the sort of policy documents. We will want to broaden our learning outcomes. We would like to have coding, we would like to have design and technology, we would want to have financial literacy as part of our learning outcomes. But the one thing that we critically look at is, even before the NEP is mandated upon us, you sort of have B.Ed refreshers for your educators, which will transform the way they look at their own, sort of responsibilities as an educator. An interesting thing Mr. Pandey had said a little earlier on is that why do many people don't go into the field of education willingly, unless you're very passionate or mad, like most of us are. You don't go into the field of education because you don't see a career progression happening. And that is because we don't have a clearly defined structure. We don't have clearly defined B.Ed courses. So once my push sort of starts formalizing, you have sort of executive education like B.Ed, where teachers have to mandatorily go through it, then the colleges and the universities will start taking notice. They will start reforming their B.Ed, sort of courses. And which is one of the reasons I'm so passionately wanting to go to business schools and try to, discuss with them that the same way, like the other courses have placements, have commitments and have strong relationships between the industry and the education institute that pays the people who are going to be part of it, as B.Ed colleges, and as higher institute training teachers, we need to foster for a stronger relationship with this academy. And that is an operative part. Like NEP does not talk about it quite explicitly, but over the talks that I've attended, this is going to be the key aspect to making the NEP a success, because all of it is going to bottle down to say that how skilled are our teachers, and we will not get skilled teachers till we have willing, competent people who want to enter this field, and they will not enter this field till it becomes a lucrative career. And how do you make that a lucrative career? You tie the knot between the people, between the universities training them and the institutes or the corporates hiring them. And by corporates, I mean, large chains of schools, large edtech organizations, Ms. Divya being part of those, large, individual standalone schools also. And once we have a platform to build this connection, You talk about CTCs, like, for teachers, like the way we talk for engineers, for lawyers, and all of the like. We will see that, truly, education, the type of people who step into education are going to be top notch, because we may find it easy to talk to other people, but that is one of the biggest skills that, some top companies look for in people that they hire with professional qualifications. Even the best of IITians sometimes don't have this ability, which is inherent in all teachers, how to put that word across. So I personally feel that when we reform this sort of B.Ed structure and the education system and the training system that we have for educators in the formal education system, with this strong partnership, it is going to become a very lucrative career, and you will see changes right till all the grassroots. And it is the right time to think on these lines, because the biggest of universities across the world, I personally am involved with a few, including Stanford and Harvard, and a lot of angel funds are looking to invest in India for the social impact sector. Education happens to be one of them. Therefore, any industry, any university looking to tie up, looking to understand how this partnership mechanism can work, the time couldn't be better. NEP 2020 has put Indian education on the map. Right now, it's Indian EdTech on the map on the global scale. But now I believe it is going to be education training, education schools, which is going to come up in a big way. And our contribution can only be that we can continue to inspire people to be part of this profession. We can continue to sort of tell people that we are doing it for both, and we do see that our personal as well as professional and financial needs are being met through this profession. And then I don't see why, with the strong academy industry partnership, the NEP and many more, the NEP 2030, NEP 2040 and the like, will not succeed.
Thank you, Akshal. You made a very strong point that this NEP is giving an opportunity, to talk about those things which we, somehow ignored or did not talk about so far. It's an opportunity to empower our teachers. It is talking about the skill part, and certainly we need to focus upon these things. That has potential to change things, and it is you rightly said, it's a time to collaborate. It's a time to explore those collaborations with institutions from different geographies. Thank you, Akshal, for making and sharing these important points. So with this, we come to the last part of this session, which is the question part. I would request all our key speakers, if I may, start presenting these questions to you all. So I would first request, Gauri Ishwaran ma'am, if you have your presence to present the first question to you.
Yes.
Right. So, the first question has come from Miss Ruchi June. Ruchi June ji is a PGT English with the Delhi Public School, Faridabad. The question is, what would be the new assessment system after this NEP implementation?
Well, that is really the most interesting question. I was wondering who's going to bring it up. Assessment will have to vary. First and foremost, we'll have to look at how the examination system will be conducted. Is it going to be like everybody comes first term, second term, you average the marks, or is it going to be based on something else? Because if we are going to bring in experiential learning and we are going to bring in blended classrooms, so the entire structure of the assessment will have to change as to what Mr. Pandey said about the competency or rather the inherent talent of each child. So we keep all that in mind when we design the assessment. It will have to be turned on its head and not exactly what it is now. And we'll have to, in the assessment module, we'll have to bring in something about the individual student and the talent that they happen to have, whether it's music or art or dance or sports, apart from the academics. The CCE failed earlier because it was implemented all wrong. The thing is, you can't ask a teacher who teaches 4 classes, 60 kids in each class, and tell her to do the CCE for 4 into 60. It doesn't work. So you have to, if you want to have a proper assessment, then you have to work out a system wherein the teacher has the time and the focus to be able to evaluate every child. And I think the assessment system for the junior school, for the middle school, has to be vastly different from what you are going to do between classes 10, 11 and 12. And now what do we do when they come to 11th? We look at the marks and say, "Arey bhai, your marks in maths are terrible, so we won't give you science. Whether you like it or not, you go to humanities." All that will have to change. You'll have to see what the child is good at, and not by good at, I don't mean academically, what the child's interested. I'll give you an example here. I had a student who came and begged me for maths, where the entire teaching faculty said isko nahi dena hai, very poor. But he wanted to become a pilot. A pilot doesn't have to have A plus in everything, but he needs to have science. So I decided against the wishes of my teachers, and I said, let this child study science. Today he's a very successful pilot. And then I realized something. When we give subjects to children, why is flexibility important? They have to enjoy what they are studying. Just because a child is poor in maths, but he likes maths, you stick him into history and philosophy, which he's totally not interested. He spends 2 miserable years in school, in 11th and 12th. Give children the subjects that they're interested in. Some will excel, some may not excel so much, but it doesn't matter. They will go through a happy period in school, and they'll eventually find their niche and be successful. So the assessment pattern has to change, but it has to change in a manner that the teachers can do. Maybe we look more at hybrid kind of assessments that we do, but it has to be changed. And I don't have a direct answer now because it needs much more of study
Absolutely.
to be able to just completely revamp it. It can't be done at random.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you, Gauri ma'am. I'll be coming back to you. Now, I would request Anita ma'am, if you have your presence. So, if I may present the next question to you, Anita ma'am, do we have your presence?
Yes, yes, yes.
So, ma'am, this question has come from Miss Bindu Chug. Miss Bindu is a TGT with Delhi Public School, Faridabad. Question says, how important is the role of individual teachers in applying the NEP strategies? And how what all can be done, to execute every part of individual teachers. I'm also pasting the question in the chat box. So, what do you expect from individual teachers in order to execute this policy successfully?
This is NEP is in the hands of the teachers because they are going to implement NEP, starting from transaction of curriculum to assessment to ensuring that children they go through all the skills, the 21st century skills that they have to acquire. So for that, teachers are going to be the all-important person in a student's life. Now, for that, teachers also would have to undergo a lot of training in the attitude, in the mindset, because we are here in NEP, we are also talking about, as I said earlier, personalized learning, that is child-centered learning. So for looking at every child's interest, aptitude, a teacher would have to design a program according to the child's interest. So not that you are going to take the same strategy you are going to apply to 30 children or 40 children. Here you have to understand learning styles of different children. And accordingly, you have to accommodate every child. So I would say it is a teacher is the all-important person in a student's life, in the nation's life, because the teachers are going to implement NEP in the schools. And what we can see even now also, CBSE especially has done a lot of training programs for teachers, sensitizing everyone regarding NEP, how to go about it, how we are going to deal with the classroom transactions, how we are going to deal with the bagless days, how we should be dealing with the assessments, how we should be dealing with the inclusive education as well. So I would say the teachers are going to be the focal point, although it is a child-centric education.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anita ma'am. I'll be coming back to you. Now, I would request Variak sir, if I may present this question to you.
If I may just interrupt for a moment. Thank you for inviting me. Due to a personal commitment, I have to leave now. But thank you so much for having invited me, and it has been a most enlightening experience. And I'm sorry, but I have to leave now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gauri ma'am, for your presence. So, Varek sir, this question has come from Miss Monica Sodhi ji. Monica ji is the academic coordinator with the SDFC School, Gurugram. The question, in fact, we have also received similar questions in the previous sessions. I've pasted the question in the chat box. What would be the difference in the syllabus of state board with respect to CBSE and ICSE board? I would also attach a supplementary question to it, sir. Many people believe that this NEP would create an environment for an eventual, where would be having a single board for the entire nation. Are we going in that direction?
One is that personally, I feel we are a very, very large country with a very, very diverse background, and to expect so soon that the NEP can put into action one board to cover all that is there on the canvas, I don't know how far practical it will be. You see, in India, every region has its own peculiarities. Every region has its own requirements. Every region has its own job opportunities. So we need to educate our children so that they can stand on their own feet and do what is required of them. Now, whether one board can actually look into all this is actually a practical problem which needs to be studied in its entirety. A beginning has been made, as I said earlier, that the NEP is looking into holistic development, education, but there is one gray area where the people who have authored this document and the people who are going to implement this document is about the understanding and interpretation of this document. There seems to be a little variance. I hope this converges so that the understanding is common. I write something, the person who's reading and interpreting should also understand the same what I have, the author has written. So there is a little perceptual difference. The other major takeaway from this NEP is a focus on how to learn and not what to learn. Because earlier we were putting our mind onto what to learn. Have you learned that? You're testing rote learning, and we know why rote learning came in. Why our old Indian educational system was destroyed when the British came and we wanted a Babu culture who could produce documents, noting sheets as per the rules and regulations that were laid out. So these are issues which will unfold in times to come as we start implementing this NEP. And we may have to doctor it a little to make it practically implementable. And that's all I have to say. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. I'll be coming back to you, for your concluding remarks. And now I would request Vinay Pandey, sir. Sir, this question has come from Miss Nanak Kaur Bhular. Miss Bhular is a junior wing in charge with the Yadvindra Public School, Mohali. The question says, NEP focuses upon giving standardized education to children all over India, but now due to COVID, huge learning gaps, can be seen among children at different levels. As per the coverage of syllabus at each level, some school children went through schooling in a systematic way. Other due to many students could not go to that, could not get that systematic education due to the lack of resources. So how we should cover up for that gap? I'm also posting the question in the chat box, sir.
Okay, I mean my take on this is that if we are going to sit down and work out how much of syllabus was missed and how do we now sit down and ensure that the entire syllabus is covered, I don't think that's a practical way of looking at this problem. If you're talking of the early stage education, as I can understand, this question is coming from that area. I think the teacher should now just focus on the basic understanding of concepts in certain subjects. Again, the fact is some schools are reopening, some schools are still shut. Some parents have allowed children to come to the schools, some parents are still hesitant to do so. What I have come across, schools, I live in Dehradun currently. So what they do is whatever is being taught in the classroom, even if the children are not coming to the school, the same material is also being transmitted across to children at home. And what the schools are doing systematically are that whatever has been missed in the previous year, due to the COVID situation, they are making small capsules of those basic concepts and areas and dealing with those in the classrooms with the children who are present with them, and also conveying the same thing to the students who are still at home. Time is short. Most of the schools have just reopened. And if they continue just taking the backlog, they'll realize by the time they do so, most of the academic year of this 2021 is also gone. So I think if I was at school at the helm of affairs, my strategy would have been that I sit down with my teachers, I work out what are those key areas in different subjects which were essential for a child to be knowing at that stage, and work out small capsules of those specific areas of those subjects, teach those concepts or areas to the students who are coming to the school, and at the same time convey the same to the children who are at home. I think this is the best way, looking forward to this kind of a problem.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I'll be coming back to you for your concluding remark. Now, I would request Anil, sir, if I may present this question to you.
Yeah.
So, question has come from Ms. Rajni Gupta ji. Rajni ji is a PGT with the HDFC School, Gurugram. The question says, how it is going to impact the, senior classes, the CBSE examination, the senior classes.
Actually speaking, Rajul, the idea of the board, which is like if I'm talking about CBSE and the state boards and all that, so the policy document says that you focus yourself on competency. So the exams which are going to follow in future, almost in the tune with that, things have come up now. Like questions of assertion reasoning in the science subjects have been introduced. Even in the other branches of the like accountancy and business studies and all that, case study questions have been put in. So it's more of application of mind rather than, I'll say, simply if you know something and reproduce. So the idea is to understand whether the child has understood what has been given to the child or not. That is the primary focus which the board is looking at. This is at the end of the term which we are referring to. But it has to be, it will be, I'll say, progressive way of understanding how the child has come up. So they will be asking for the reports from how the peers are going to evaluate their counterparts, or how the teachers evaluate a particular child, and then finally what the board assesses the child. So as of today, what is happening is that those 20% marks which have been given in the internal assessment by the board, they will increase to about another 10%, and it will finally be at 30% border. 70% will be from the board's perspective and 30% from the school's perspective. So that will become a composite document for the child. That's how the schools are supposed to be functioning in the times to come. Maybe by 2022, you will get to hear this on this line.
Right, sir. Sir, I'll also add one supplementary question to this. Many people have asked this question. A lot of people believe that this NEP is a kind of an effort which will dilute the importance of board exams. So how do you see that? Is it going to dilute?
No. The idea is definitely, again, I'll say it is a narrow construction of the understanding of the policy document. I'll say the idea is something which the NEP is trying to empower schools. And at some stage by 2025, if it actually works out well, it will be 50-50. The board will be assessing 50% and then the school will be assessing 50%. Those 50% which is coming from the school has to be uniform across all schools, is going to be a challenge for the board also. Today, it is like 20%, which is a challenge. Tomorrow, it will be a 50% challenge for the board. So in a way, the idea is not that. The idea is, let us find out, this is what we have given you as a minimum to be achieved. check whether the child has achieved by virtue of field visits, by virtue of case studies, by virtue of analyzing the data at their own place and doing the minimum which is being required to be done. Those things will also be documented in the board's document, and these are supposed to be done by each individual child. So how you rate them, and then finally that will be merged with what the board has finally checked. So if that doesn't match, board also is looking at, with the help of technology, how there is a imbalance between what is being an internal assessment and what is finally going to be the board's assessment. At times it has been observed the children getting 30 on 30 in practicals and they get actually 0 in theory. So it is something which is, it's a challenge for the board itself to actually deal with it. But truly speaking, the board is at it to even fix that problem also. So I'm sure CBSE will definitely come up with the solutions to this. And in the meetings of the board, I have attended whatever in the past, they are very clear by year after year, this will be changing. And that document is expected soon, maybe by 2022 or 23. Then this change will definitely be there in line. For classes 11 and 12, this assessment will be not only one-sided by the board, but it has to be duly vetted by the school. And on the other hand, the board will say, okay, I'm ready to accept what the school has said, because then the school is actually speaking, staking its claim on affiliation if they project wrong things about the children in which they are basically studying. And if need be, the external examiners will be put in the way practical exams are being conducted even today. So that is what is in order to see the competency levels, not only the theoretical part.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anil sir. I'll be coming back to you for your concluding remark. And now I would request Divyaji, if I may present this question to you. Divyaji, do we have your presence? Okay, I believe Divyaji, yeah, we have Divyaji. Divyaji, you are, from the world of technology. You have been into education for so many decades now. A lot of people have asked us, how do you visualize the schools of, let's say, 20 years from now, the schools of 2040?
Well, I hope there are two ways you visualize. One is what could be a practical, one is an aspirational. But the best drive I could build is that when children come to schools in 2040, they get an array of collaborative workshops, tasks that they could do, where they could really bring the experiential learning and the collaboration both to the fore. I could also come to a place where you could really express your understanding in any aspect, any which way, whether you want to sing a song about it or whether you can write about it. Your assessment is not limited to a couple of modes of assessment which happen. And 3, there is a strong digital system where children have their own space to explore things on LMSs. Teachers have their own space. Teachers don't correct question papers, regular homework. They bring in to correct more detailed stuff. That load is taken away so that they can spend time preparing how their interaction and the role of facilitator itself will come to life, rather than just finishing the chapter and picking up 50 notebooks and going back and going to a staff room and checking in a 0 period or carrying papers home. I think we need to unburden a lot of things so that the most important people, teachers are the most pivotal people in the learning process, and how we empower them using tech, how we create a connectivity using tech are things that I would like to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Divyaji. I'll be coming back to you for your concluding remark. And now I would request Akshal, and this would be the last question for the day. Akshal, this is again a very regular question to us. A lot of people are talking about it now. We are going to adopt that hybrid model of learning. So people have asked this thing, many times with us. What would be that hybrid model? Let's say once things become normalized, let's say 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So how do you see, like, what would be the role of technology? What are your assessment?
So I think that one great factor that hybrid will bring is it will overcome geographical barriers. So if I want to sit into a class of a kindergarten and I want the best of experiential learning educators from the US to take a class with me, I can. If I'm talking about grade 11 or 12, now a child is no longer limited. So the most challenging problem that schools face is to not offer a stream based upon the number of children who will take it. If it is not viable, if 2 or 3 children opt for a particular stream or a particular subject, till it is enough for to pay for a teacher's salary. However, if you are offering some portion of the curriculum via this hybrid approach, you can pool the best of educators from across the world, best of children from across the different schools, and you are not limited by the physical presence of educators in the classroom. So that is why we are going to truly move to a field where we can actually have a transdisciplinary approach, not limited to streams. Streams, in fact, they are an important part of our curriculum, but they have an important business reason as well. You can club stream. You don't have random 500 subjects that the children opt for, and you need 500 odd educators. But now children will be absolutely free, in the hybrid world, to take education from wherever they want, and then also not letting go of the main reasons of the brick and mortar schools why they are in existence. We will continue to retain the good aspects of a physical school, which will come only from a physical presence, but then some portion of it is going to be hybrid, wherein we can start building on the technology skills of the children very early. We can talk about things like internet banking, talk about financial literacy, talk about things like staying safe online at a very early age, so that the children are really prepared for the digital century ahead. Our schools did not prepare that, because when we passed out, and I was a very recent product, most of the current generation of adults, when they passed out, they were part of the early part of the 21st century, where our system was not ready to tackle the challenge of the new century. But now, with hybrid learning coming into the schools, hybrid learning coming to the part of the classroom, we can truly say that we can prepare our children for the many, many decades of digital revolution to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Akshal. We all agree with your perspective. So with this, we come to the end of this very, very, very special 125th session of Leadership Talks. I once again thank you all. But before we end the session, I would request all our speakers, if we can have your concluding remark. And we have also established one very interesting practice, that while sharing your concluding remark, if you can also share some ideas, some thought that you would like to implement as a priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education of our country. So what would be your priority that you would like to implement if you get that opportunity? So I'll come to you randomly, so that you cannot fix your answers. So I'll begin with Akshal. Akshal, if I may ask you for your concluding remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education? Akshal. You are on mute, Akshal.
So at the risk of tooting my own horn, I'll just go out on a limb and say that the learning outcomes that I have devised along with my team, with over a lot of research in going beyond the 20th century skills, I would publish those learning outcomes as the Minister of Education to that entire country. So all schools, they are forced to look at a holistic learning outcomes document, not just the syllabus, a comprehensive learning outcomes document. And if they want, I'll be there to help them as an organization to how to translate those learning outcomes into action. So that is my contribution. If I get a chance, I would love to do that.
Thank you, Akshal. And now I would request Divyaji, if I may ask you for your concluding remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education?
Okay, so my concluding remarks. Time to take us back to the whiteboard. Right to education is right to bandwidth, and that is something we're talking at a policy level also. My concluding remark, my piece on if I become the minister, make teaching the highest paid profession in this country, and everything will be set right fundamentally. You will bring in the best talent, you will churn the best way, and everything will fall into place.
Divyaji, I have a supplementary question to that, but a lot of people say that there are many teachers, not many, but there are few teachers who are very good, and they are, they are earning good amount of money. So they are among the highest, paying bracket of the people. So what government
you will be surprised is that majority of the people that actually even head institutions, at the risk of saying this, their own children necessarily do not get into teaching professions. This is not the way. It's great. Obviously, there are good people. It's not like everybody is this thing. But I believe that if you really want to position education as a fundamental pillar of the society, you need to also ensure that their aspirations are also taken care of. Okay. And there is a reason that why people would run to a corporate or would run to something else is also to fulfill a certain set of aspirations, etc. So all I'm saying is, if you bring in that aspect also, it will only help the system. to, attract better talent at any given point of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Divyaji.
I will be exiting, Rajul. I have to get into another one. It's 5:15. So thank you so much. And a very big thanks to everybody on the panel. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divyaji, for participating. Now I would request Anil sir. Anil sir, if I may ask you for your concluding remark, and what would be your priority if you get a chance to become Minister of Education?
Firstly, I'll say it will be a delight for the country to have a teacher being the education minister, which is primarily the best thing. So that's on a lighter note. But truly speaking, if you ask me, I'll say happy children will produce a happy environment and a happy nation. If my youth is unhappy, I actually speaking, to end this with that kind of a note is not very a bright idea, but one must be not away from the reality. The fact of the matter is, TISS conducted a particular survey about 2017, and they came out with the finding that 82% children studying at Kota in various engineering and medicine schools for the entrance purposes, you won't believe, they are unhappy. It's a sad state of affairs. Out of which एक कुछ तो word हुआ unhappy, एक कोई नाखुश, एक है दुखी. The range of dukhi is about 49%. Sad are about 49%. So if your country produces 18% only from that one small unit which I'm referring to, you look at the whole nation. If only 15-20% of my youth is happy exiting from the school and are being successful at later stage, I'll say we have not done the service to the nation what it is supposed to be. At least my kids.
आपका तो इतना अनुभव है और जैसे जो आपके फादर ने एक बात आपसे कही कि भाई आप हमें पढ़ना लिखने के साथ साथ गुणी भी होना चाहिए. तो अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि कोई एक मैजिक तरीका कि जो आप कहें ये तो करना ही चाहिए हमारे एजुकेशन सिस्टम में लाना, जिससे हैप्पी स्टूडेंट्स क्रिएट हो सके, जिससे गुणी बच्चे पैदा हो सके.
You won't believe, Rajul, before this pandemic, we have devised a plan for our school that children from a certain class, starting from nursery, will be bagless. Now the policy talks about bagless. So my children up to the certain age, I'll say up to the 7 years of age, children should not carry anything on their back. It's detrimental to their spine. It is detrimental to their understanding. It is detrimental to their cognitive development. I remember myself when I used to walk into the school. We up to 5.5 साल से पहले तो दाखिल नहीं करते थे सरकारी स्कूलों में पहले. और अगर जब 7 साल पहुंचे तो आप कितना you will carry a small bag around you, just one takhti along with you and a slate. You know what do you need? Foundational literacy and foundational numeracy. This is what being talked about anything. And perhaps you don't need beyond this. What we are perhaps actually aiming at is something which is, we really don't know what are we trying to do. Honestly speaking, mother tongue, which Professor Yashpal came to our school way back in 2005, and he said, up to 5th standard at least, we should teach children in their mother tongue. Because it is the understanding, it is the cognition which develops in the mother tongue only, because the child has started learning how to communicate with the mother first. And the way mother speaks, that's how it has to be propagated. Now, if we are importing a foreign language, whether it is English, whether it is a necessity or it's a secondary issue, but there are countries across the globe which have not adopted to this English. Look at the country like China, look at country like Russia, look at country like France. They have not adopted this English to that level which we have basically adopted to. There is nothing wrong in adopting a language, but truly speaking, our understanding actually gets faltered when we do all these things. So NEP has all these good things available in it. So I'm sure that the future is bright. I don't intend to be the education minister. I wish to be an educationist. So I would love to be in that direction only and prepare children to be on the happier note and they pass out happy from the school. That should be the aim.
Happiness should be the target. Happiness should be the
Correct.
objective. Thank you. Thank you, Anil sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I hope that your ideas get implemented.
Yeah.
Now, when I'll be coming back to Anita ma'am, I would be asking this question as well. What solution we can find for this visible problem, this bag burden thing. So I'll be coming back to you, Anita ma'am, but I would request Vinay sir now. Vinay sir, if I may ask you for your concluding remark, and if you get a chance to become Minister of Education, what would be your priority?
Okay, for my concluding remark, I would say in my opening remark, I had mentioned that this NEP 2020 has given us a very robust skeletal system. And I think what the need of the hour is to have sufficient and adequate quantity of flesh and blood infused into this skeletal structure. How we are going to do that, that is where the challenge is, which we have been discussing today. And I'm sure in the coming months and a couple of years ahead of us, we'll continue to discuss that. But I would say that it is very important to have all stakeholders involved in the decision making when it comes to infusing flesh and blood. Because if this is done by people sitting closed doors who don't have much idea about what school education is all about, we are going to have a fabulous document about which we have been speaking, which will really fail to create what we have been dreaming. And as far as education minister's role is concerned, I think partly what Divya had mentioned earlier, that, and this has been my saying always, that the teachers have to be given their due position in the society. It's not just always money, that respect has to be there. But yes, if the teachers know that they are in for good remuneration in this field, their progression along the coming years is going to be really good. Why not? This will be one of the most coveted professions in the country in the coming years.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all hope for the same, sir. Thank you, Vinay sir, for your remarks. And now I would request TPS Variak sir, sir, if we can have your concluding remark, and what would be your priority, sir, if you get a chance to become Minister of Education? Then we'll go to Anita ma'am. Variak sir.
Well, in my concluding remarks, I come back to my opening remark. The key to implementing the NEP 2020 is about the training of teachers. They are the key. The other issue is the understanding of the document, that is the NEP 2020, what the authors have put on paper and what the implementers, that is the educationists, teachers, educational institutions, understand and put on ground to implement this document. So the author and the reader, who is also the implementer, have to be on the same platform. And as far as, you know, the hypothetical case of the education minister, I reiterate what my former speakers and colleagues have said. Education should not be a burden. It should be a happy experience in life. A student should not look at education as a big burden, you know, carrying books, looking at a large syllabus and various examinations. It is becoming a burden now. I hope this NEP, if implemented correctly, will make it a happy journey and a happy experience. Thank you.
Absolutely. We all hope for the same, sir. Thank you, Variak sir. Now I would request Anita ma'am. Ma'am, we would like to conclude the session with your concluding remark. And what would be your priority if you get a chance to become, Minister of Education? Anita ma'am.
No, Rajul, I'm very happy being an educator. But in case I'm asked to devise a program for my children, I would really like to have a program where I can expose my children with experiences right from agriculture to technology, to industry, to financial world, so that they can connect with the real life and also learn from the real life examples. Other is, of course, let there not be any silos while we teach. So there should be an interconnection of various subjects, and they must be related to their life long learning. So this is my concluding remark. Thank you.
And that question which I was asking to Anil sir, ma'am, we all see that this bag problem has been here for so long, and everyone is talking about that. It is so visible. So if I may ask you, if you can offer one or two solutions to that, why students need to carry bag, why cannot they have two kind of textbook, two copy of textbooks and copies, so.
I would say children need not carry bags because most of the schools are having some place for children to keep their notebooks, books. So nowadays we work with the worksheets also. It is an extension of classwork, what they do at home. But of course, the bag should be as light as possible. Let it contain all the storybook or a tiffin box, something which they really like to hold on to. Whereas homework is concerned, there I would like that at least some time every child must spend in self-learning. Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. Because right now we don't have such facilities around every home where children can go out to play, engage themselves in different activities, theater, music, games, whatever. So children should be engaged constructively also. They must have some structured time at home, some unstructured time at home. So that is my
Absolutely.
opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anita ma'am, for that remark. And I again thank you all the key speakers, Gauri Ishwaran ma'am, Anita ma'am, Valiak sir, Vinay sir, Anil sir, Divya ma'am, Pankaj sir, Akshal, for participating and making this 125th session of Leadership Talks really special. I also thank other participants for joining and being with us for the entire session. We'll end the session here. Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.